So in this session we're going to learn how to construct chords. Now you may already know how to make chords, but there might be things in this video that you haven't come across before, or you might not understand the actual logic of building a chord. So previously in the other videos we learnt about scales and we learnt about keys, and we learnt about how to create little melodies. So the next thing we need to come to understand is harmony, and chords are going to give us the key to harmony. And the harmony is just basically what things sound like together. So we have a whole system of chords, and I'm going to show you how to work that out for yourself, and then how to play around with the chords. And then in the next video I'll be showing you a chord sequence and how to bring melodies out of the chord sequence in your improvisations. And then later we shall go on to look at how to use chords to put in the background of melodies that you're playing by ear. So lots of fun to be had with chords. So the way we make a chord is this. You may have seen on the top of pieces of music, or guitar music, or songs that you've sung, chord symbols, and you might have seen things like this. So say if we were in the key of C and we're using the chord of C, you might have seen straightforward C, C6, C7, C with the word dim next to it, C org, C with a little M. So in this lesson, we're going to be looking not at that side of the chord, because that side of the chord describes properties about the chord or additions to the chord. We're just going to be looking at this side of the chord, the C. And C is the bottom note of the chord. Now if I was doing a D chord, of course D would be the bottom note of the chord, or what you call the root note. So when we make a chord, we basically, if I just write the musical alphabet out a moment, C, F, G, A, B, C, and I want to make a C chord. If I circle the C, miss out the next note, circle the E, miss out the next note, circle the G, that gives us the three notes of a C chord. Now those three notes will always make up a C chord, regardless of whether some of them might be sharp or flat, but we're not worrying about that at the moment. We just want to get the basic building blocks of chords. So if I was going to be doing a D chord, I'll just underline these. We would use the D, miss out a note, use the F, miss out a note, and use the A. And that's basically how you spell chords. But let's look at what that looks like on the piano now. So making the C chord, if I have C, my root note, and then I miss out a note and miss out a note, that makes the C chord. Okay, now if I go up our C scale, which we were doing in the last video, each note being the root note of a chord, goes like this. So we can make a chord on each note of the scale, and those chords come to be your building blocks for composition and for improvising and for playing by ear. They're what you'll be using. It doesn't mean to say we can't add other things in. You notice I didn't use any black keys in that particular sequence because we're in the key of C and we're not using any sharps or flats. But sometimes in the key of C we might actually add a black key in just to give a bit of flavour and interest to the music. But for the time being we're sticking with all the white keys and the key of C. And of course on your own you can transfer all of this into other keys, and that's what I would hope you would do, because as a jazz teacher once said to me years back, life isn't in C major. C major actually is a very boring key. So but we're sticking with it now because it's the easiest. So you noticed that the chord was made of a miss a note pattern, as I call it. Now there's a technical way of describing this. First of all, that shape is called a triad. And in music we have what you call intervals, and an interval is the distance between two notes. Now before we looked at semitones and tones, but we have another way of describing the distance between notes. So, for example, that is called a third. So, anytime there are three note names involved, C, D, E, that's called a third. Even if we took that down to an E flat, that's a third. Okay. The other intervals are second, C to an F would be a fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh and octave, and then up into ninths and tenths and so on. So you'll notice then that the C major chord and all of the chords we've looked at are made out of two thirds, piled one on top of the other. Now if we go back to thinking about the semitones that we talked about in the previous session, and if you measure each of these thirds in semitones, you'll notice that the bottom third goes up 4 semitones. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. So that third is made of 4 semitones. Now if you look at the top third we have here, we've got 1. Remember, no black key between the note makes that a semitone. So we've got 1, 2, 3 semitones. The bottom third is called a major third. So a third made of 4 semitones is called a major third. And a third made of 3 semitones is called a minor third. So we have a major third and a minor third. You find in music we use the words major and minor in different contexts. So we have major and minor keys, major and minor chords, and major and minor intervals. So for now we're looking at the major third and the minor third. Now it's the lower third that gives the name to the chord. So if we have a chord and on the bottom it has a major third, that's called a major chord. So the name of this chord is C major. Now when that's written, we usually only write using the letter C. So if you see a C above a piece of music, that's telling you this bit of music is based around a C chord. Okay. Sometimes you might see it with a maj next to it, like that, and sometimes you might see it with just a capital M, but for the most part you will see just a C. So just a C means a C major chord. Okay.